Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler, in association with Square. Square can help with your business needs from online ordering and menu management to payments. Visit square.com for more. Now, in a few months' time, Disney is going to hike the price of its online streaming service by around €2, following others like Netflix, which have done the same in recent months. Now, this means that the era of cheap streaming looks like it's over. So, the question is, will you pay when the prices go up? Are there any decent alternatives? Have you tried things like Sky Stream, for example? And will we all ever watch the same thing again? Well, joining me to discuss this, Dee Malumbi is audience editor at independent.ie and a pop culture expert, and Dave Hanratty is an arts and culture journalist. Before we get into the heavy stuff, I want to take a little straw poll here. What do you both actually subscribe to, and maybe what have you cancelled, Dee?
I have far too many subscriptions. Okay. I have Netflix. We have Prime Video. My husband now, he has that set up. Something to do with the delivery. It's included. You have to ask.
Oh, with Amazon Prime, yeah.
Yeah. You'd have to ask him about all that. And Now is actually one of the newer ones we're subscribed to. And if I were to let one of them go, it probably would be Now.
So you only have three?
No, we also have Apple TV Plus, and we have the Channel 4 player. Oh, and Disney Plus.
Oh, and Disney Plus.
Okay, I hadn't finished too many.
That's fairly representative. Well, it's not that many. So I've all of those. I also have Mubu, which is the independent movie specialist service.
Yeah.
Discovery Plus, YouTube Premium I have as well, so that I can listen to it with the screen off, or when I'm doing other stuff on the phone, and no ads. So my bill comes to about 60 or 70 euro a month, not including Sky, which I also pay for. Dave, what about you?
Comparatively less, I suppose. I thought I was going to come in with all of them, but no, I only have Prime Video, Disney Plus, Mubi as well, because art house films, of course. Nice little service there. I also have trials at the moment with Apple, and then within that Paramount Plus. So I get on a whim the other night.
I forgot Paramount Plus.
Yeah,
we're subscribed to that as well. So no Netflix.
No, I was recently using Netflix via a shared account, which I hope I don't go to prison for by admitting. But as far as I'm aware, there's no illegality there. But they have clamped down on that now, and so.
Okay, tell me what happened to you there. How did that work?
So they brought in a new system. They've been threatening it for years. It was always a story that you would see doing the rounds every few months, and we wondered if they would actually start to actually bring it in. However, they have now done it. So essentially what happened there was one day I got an email saying that your Netflix account will only be registered to one household. If you want to add another household, you pay, I think it's $4.99 a month extra to do so. So now, essentially...
Household, the way they tell households apart is via an IP address, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's purely down to the IP address because they can locate you that way. So I stumbled into it by accident, not realising that it would actually lock out my mother's account. So that's, we were sharing the account there. And then I had to just kind of reroute it, register.
She pays for the account, by the way, right?
She does, yeah, to my great shame.
That's a pretty nice arrangement. How old are you, Dave? Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I feel horrendous now. I feel like I've walked in some kind of trial here. But I mean, it was just a long-running agreement, I pay for other stuff. It's fine. So basically I looked at it and I thought, I don't know if I want to sign up for an account for myself or even do the extra $4.99 thing because I'm not really using it that much.
So that's interesting because Netflix, whenever they do surveys of what service most people use, Netflix always comes out on top, not just marginally, by a long, long way. It's usually considered to be the one that most people couldn't consider dropping. So you don't miss the stuff. I'm trying to think now of series and movies and
Stranger
documentaries.
Things or something, yeah. They're kind of
also
exclusives.
The documentaries. It seems that every month there's one or two water cooler style documentaries that people will watch or will be talking about, but you don't miss it.
They're big on the true crime thing, which wouldn't be my forte necessarily, but I think as well the Netflix thing, the point that you bring up I think is interesting because I think that they have a kind of a market dominance with regards to name value, brand recognition, the logo. It's almost Google-esque at this stage. It's here since 2012, I believe. I think people just take it like they're like passively, well, we should have Netflix, shouldn't we? And let's just have it there in the background.
Oh, do you think? Oh, see, that's kind of like so people are dumb.
No, not necessarily. I think it's more just it's so established. It's just so kind of household name. It's almost a verb.
I think that Netflix have a really kind of neat system set up whereby they are constantly adding to their library, both from kind of old content, movies and TV shows that were out maybe a few years ago, as well as adding like brand new stuff. So you look at, say, like some of the things that are in the top 10 now. From what I remember the last time I checked, the number one movie on Netflix at the moment is The Founder. Now, you might remember this is Michael Keaton.
Oh, Michael Keaton, yeah.
Yeah, the whole McDonald's story. Yeah, and a lot of people might have missed that in cinemas when it came out. So they're like, this is great, now we can watch it. And it's kind of one of those, like I watched it myself because it was added to Netflix, and it's kind of, it's fun, it's zippy, it's a really kind of easy movie to watch, I suppose. And then they also have a bunch of their own original content. So Heart of Stone is another movie that's doing really well at the moment, Gal Gadot. And then they have like new series that are constantly being added. So Painkiller, for example, and the new season of Dairy Girls is just
Painkiller, a new season of Dairy Girls?
So it's season 3.
Yeah.
So if you weren't watching it kind of when it was showing, then it might be your first time watching Dairy Girls.
Yeah. And you mentioned Painkiller. That was, I think, the same story as
Dopesick.
Yes, as Dopesick. Yeah. Dopesick, which was magnificent.
And Painkiller is quite poor in comparison.
Really?
And that's what I think is quite like interesting, in that like Netflix is still adding new content, but the quality isn't necessarily there. So Heart of Stone, for example, is pretty rubbish. And Painkiller, honestly, when I watched it myself, I kind of felt like it was a waste of my time.
People always say that about Netflix. Every time I write a piece or tweet or mention, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime Video, people will say, "Oh, the quality's not there. It's just a load of rubbish. I've watched them." Nobody ever actually, very few people actually drop their subscriptions. If you look at the figures, they've more or less remained static or have grown. Interesting point, though, on why they add what they add. I've interviewed Reed Hastings, who's the Netflix CEO, a couple of times. And the first time, there was this absolute rubbish series with Famke Janssen playing a vampire. And it was about vampire and werewolves, kind of an emo gothic.
Hemlock Grove.
Hemlock Grove! Thank
Never
you.
watched
That's
it.
why we have you on the podcast, Dave. I watched it. And it was bizarrely sort of compelling, but it wasn't really good. But I asked him about it. I said, "This isn't very good, if you don't mind me saying so, Reed. But you've commissioned a new series of it." And he said, "Look, here's the thing. We know that there is a percentage of our viewership who like vampires and who like werewolves. It's only maybe 3 or 4% the core. But that's millions of people, and we know that we will keep their subscriptions if we make a series about vampires and werewolves, and that's why we make it." So even if the quality isn't there, it's a bit like the documentaries, like the true crime documentary genre. It doesn't have to be absolutely amazing for someone to be into that genre.
They have to chase numbers, though. I think there's a recent report about the amount of debt they're in, and it's anywhere from 10 to 15 billion. And you look at the amount of money that they're throwing at movies like, as Dee mentions, Heart of Stone with Gal Gadot, Red Notice, these kind of The Grey Man, like these very kind of throwaway.
I watched The Grey Man. It was okay. Ryan Gosling is always kind of watchable.
Yeah, but that was a paycheck for him, though, clearly. I mean, like, in fair play to him. But I mean,
have you seen Barbie?
Not yet. I will get to it, though.
I saw it.
Have you seen The Nice Guys? He's amazing in that. He's great at comic timing. Everyone was kind of shocked at the Barbie
thing.
thing.
The Nice Guy, but back to Barbie.
Yeah.
Have you seen Barbie, Dee?
I'm obsessed. I have seen it twice. I'll
Twice?
probably see it again.
Okay. What did you like about it? Did you like it?
Yes, I absolutely loved it. And see, I know that it probably will make its way to, streaming in some form. Probably like now, I'd imagine, because of the whole like Warner Brothers connection there. But I can't imagine it being as kind of magical an experience on streaming. But then again, I do see that as a movie that will translate quite well to home viewing as it will to cinema viewing.
Or are you a cinema buff? Do you like going to the cinema?
Oh, yeah. I love going to the cinema. In fact, like all the movies that I try to get to the cinema as much as possible, and then any other movies I pretty much stream. It's interesting because I was thinking about our topic today, and the whole idea of watching like movies when they're shown on TV, on the likes of, remember, RT used to have the midweek movie or the big movie and stuff like that. I wouldn't watch movies in that way at all anymore,
Really?
to be honest with you. Yeah.
That's how I discovered The Godfather, though. You'd have RT or BBC would do a late night movie at 11 o'clock. I remember as a teenager, they had The Godfather 3 nights running. That's how I discovered that. It's interesting. That's maybe a topic for a different time. I do have strong opinions on that. Maybe not the same as yours. But so have either of you tried the likes of Sky Glass or Sky Stream?
No.
No. So basically it's like a little set-top box Sky Stream that you plug into any television or any monitor, and it'll give you all the Sky channels. How much do you watch regular TV or traditional TV?
Oh, regular, like kind of terrestrial
RT, BBC, ITV?
Very rarely, to be honest. Rarely. I mean, like Channel 4, I would watch kind of the Channel 4 player. I keep on accidentally calling it 4OD, but it is the Channel 4 player. I'm trying to get that into my head. And I might watch something on the RT player, say if I hear like a show is really good at the moment, like the latest season of King, for example. I'd kind of wait till all of it showed, and then I would just binge it on the player.
Is linear TV then dead to you?
Pretty much. The only like shows I can think of that I would watch regularly, and I think that like, you know, this would be fairly typical within like maybe young people, would be like event TV. So something like the Late Late Toy Show. I actually don't watch the Rose of Tralee. I probably should get into it at some point, but I just can't.
No.
Or maybe Eurovision, but even that I'm starting to find a bit too cringe to watch.
Sport is kind
Sport,
of like the go-to for me in terms of terrestrial television. I even call it terrestrial television as I would have growing up. And I would have had that thing as well where I would be waiting to read the TV guide and see what would be on, you know, on BBC Two one night. And there is a certain comfort in that.
Still have TV guide? You mean the RT guide?
Well, yeah, or even like, you know, like a supplement that comes with a weekend newspaper or something, like just the TV.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Everyone should read the TV guide in the newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. Pick it up now. But I mean, the thing is, it was a much different time, and it was decided for you. I saw a thing this week where CITV, the children's channel, is shutting down after 40 years, and broadcaster Philippa Forrester was on Newsnight, and she was making the point that scheduled programs would actually give a universal kind of shared moment for people. That's gone now.
This is it. I mean, Michael Parkinson, you know, God rest his soul, passed away there about a week ago. And, you know, he was at the very zenith of that idea of shared TV moments, interviews with Muhammad Ali or whoever. We did have that in this country as well, the Late Late Show with, what was the Annie... The lady who was involved with the bishop from the west of Ireland, will come to me in a second. Annie Murphy is her name. Thank you. Things like that, like moments that really changed our culture, or that informed our culture. And you do sort of wonder, is there any of that left, other than sport? Other than, you know, like, where's the Italia 90 moment coming from? You know, is it just gone?
Honestly, the closest example I can think of would be, say, reality television. So something like Love Island, which is shown like every night. Now, I didn't watch the last season of Love Island. I think that for me and a lot of my friends, it's just kind of been the cutoff point since the Ekin-Su and Davide season, which in fairness was like a high point, I think, of television. And those two are just like goals and amazing, even though they have broken up since. But I think that we do get a lot of those iconic, you know, TV moments from reality. And you can see how they've kind of been repackaged, and now they become like TikTok reels and stuff like that. And you find that, you know, a lot of young people, they're not even watching the show as it's airing on TV. They're just watching all of the clips on TikTok, and that's how they're consuming TV
now.
I
actually do that a bit myself on YouTube. Yeah. If I'm watching YouTube for a while, I'll watch it like TikTok, and it knows what my shows are, and it'll play me 2.5 minute spots from The Wire, season 2 or season 4 or whatever. I'll watch them. I'll watch them for 30 minutes straight. But some people might say, well, what about things like the finale of Succession or Game of Thrones? And I know that, relatively speaking, hardly anyone actually watches those shows. Like, hardly anyone. I remember seeing a figure, Mad Men. You know, the way The Guardian, and we all used to go on about Mad Men. It had something like a few 100,000 viewers in total. It was hardly anyone watched it. And we go on about Succession and Game of Thrones, and I was a fan, certainly, of Game of Thrones. But even with that few people watching, is that the closest we're going to come outside reality TV, outside sport? Is that the closest we're going to come to a kind of a community moment?
There's always going to be something that will take the place of the monoculture. I mean, I think back to stuff like Lost, like that television show when it was on. That was appointment television. That was like, I remember a friend calling around to my house once when there was an episode on, and I was like, wait 10 minutes. I'll see you in 10 minutes. I have to see the end of the show. That's different now. It doesn't really happen anymore. Succession's an interesting example because, yes, the ratings might have been as high as they would have been in you know, at peak TV, but it did feel with that one where it was like, you have to see that straight away.
So, but was that just among peer groups? Because really, if you look in total at the number of people, I mean, in Ireland, in the UK, who watched Succession, 10%?
I think maybe it's a bubble thing, like a
even?
social media situation where the people that you follow who are watching the show are going to talk about
That's what I mean, like pockets.
Yeah, Game
bubbles.
of Thrones was bigger, and that did feel like one of the last great ones because it's in this weird transitional space between the sitting down and watching it on, Sky Atlantic or whichever versus now people like the rise of illegal streaming, of course, is everywhere as well. We have to take that into consideration. But yeah, the days are gone of The Sopranos or something where it was full on. I have to see it at 9:30 on Monday on Network 2. And if I don't see it then, well, I hope someone taped it. We've too much options, though. I mean, what you were saying there about the kind of algorithm, like feeding you The Wire, and we all love The Wire, it's the best show ever, but does that mean that you're never challenged? That you're only going to be seeing the things that you already like? I mean, is there a conversation to be had about us just kind of regurgitating the same thing over and
So
over again?
answer that theory, answer that rhetorical question. What do you think the antidote to that should be?
Someone programming a schedule for you, aka traditional television that we've all walked away from.
Ooh, a traditionalist.
Well, but I'm guilty of the same things though, and I will watch the same stuff.
Do you think that somehow, from a policy perspective or an incentive or through funding, for example, that it would be better for us socially, from a civilization point of view, to have more of those linear moments, those centrally funded moments, as you're kind of referring to, that we're not in all of these silos?
I mean, variety is the spice of life, and what I would say is that the problem, though, is that we all like our comforts. And for example, I'm more likely to just chill out in my room with my television as opposed to go to the living room to watch television when I could watch it via my laptop, on the RT player. Or
What do we have to do to make you go to the living room to watch it with everyone else then?
I don't know. I think the horse is bolted is the problem, and I don't know.
You're the problem.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no. But I've gone from one to the other. I've gone from the sitting it with a CRT TV back in the day when I was in school to just having too much choice. We have too much choice now. This is the problem.
But sorry, Dee.
No, just to add to that, I actually think that the streaming culture that we currently live in is very much a part of like modern day living and even like modern day humanity. It is about freedom of choice. It's also about, individualization. You can subscribe to whatever service you want. You could just watch non-stop costume dramas if you wanted. You can watch them on your phone on the way into work if you want. You can come home and you can watch a few episodes of your new favorite show, or you can just go back and watch the same show over and over again. I think that we're living in a society that's so much more individualized than it's ever been before. And I also think that contemporary streaming culture is very kind of reflective of modern working life. I think that this is just from my own observation. I think that people, human beings are working harder than they ever have before. And when they come home, they just want to sit down and watch TV and just veg out. And they want to be able to kind of pick and choose whatever they want to. So
Dave's making the point that there can be culturally downsides to that.
Yeah, I
To
suppose
having
so.
too much choice, to having too much of an individual opportunity, for example.
I mean, I think the only way that we can maybe come back to that whole community feel is that when somebody gives you a recommendation that you actually go and watch it, and then you go back to said individual and say, I watched this program. But I think that people are far too driven towards their own wants and needs now when it comes to consumption.
I remember when I was a kid watching TV, for example, I mean, we would watch what was ever on TV. So we ended up watching 4 hours of snooker.
It's pretty addictive, though.
Snooker.
Yeah.
Cliff Thorburn and Steve Davis and Ray Reardon. And
we had our Italian 90 moment, though, with Ken Doherty in 97. And I remember we were all gathered around the TV for that as well. That was an actual event. And again, as you say, yes, snooker.
Yeah.
A very quiet, somnambulent sport. But it worked in that setting, I think.
Yeah.
What I want to know, though, is like, how often do we waste time going to watch a movie? It's 10 o'clock, I want to watch a movie because I've got a letterboxd account and I want to add to it or whatever, and which again, in and of itself, I'm like, is this healthy? But I'll spend an hour.
Seinfeld has a good routine about that back in the day. He's just like, just go to bed. No, you're just standing there with a remote control and you're, looking for more entertainment. Just go to bed.
And Seinfeld's on Netflix, by the way, which I would say is a good reason to have a Netflix account. Fair enough. You got me back in. But I've wasted the length of a film looking to watch a film, and I'm just scrolling through film after film after film, and my brain won't actually make a decision. And I'm like, what's going on? What kind of psychological...
wasting your precious time so much that you will just take the intros from each...
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, you're
not
just
healthy.
window shopping the whole time. So the services are going to go up in price. Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, said that he thinks their service is just way too cheap at $8, $9, $10. to be fair, in terms of market demand, he's probably right in terms of what the market will pay for that particular service. Anyone with a family, with kids, with the kind of IP they have there with movies and films, they probably will spend more than €9 a month. Where do you think the cutoff point is? Realistically, I have my own views on this. I think probably people will pay more for the services they like. What do you think? Where do you think we're going with this? Will people take will they pay an extra $5 or $10 a month? Are we headed down a route towards inevitable amalgamation of a few of them into like a package? What do you think?
Yeah, again, I feel like it's going to be really down to kind of individualized reactions. I know that, for example, in my parents' home, they've decided that Disney Plus had to make the cut recently because of the general price rises. They had to pick one of them, and unfortunately, Disney Plus was the one to bite the dust. Like I kind of was talking about earlier, I feel like for us it'd probably be now, because it always bugs me when I go onto that service and I see all their recommendations and they've mixed the movies with the TV, but you have to buy separate packages for each. That just really irks me for whatever reason, especially because some of the movies that they have are so like new and ones I might have missed, and then I'm like tempted, but then I'm like, but then I have to buy a whole new subscription to that. And frankly, I'm just kind of running out of shows to watch on now at the moment. So I mean, I don't see anything happening in the future of all of these services, coming together for the sake of the user. I think that all of these streamers are going to be very much like protecting their little slice of the pie, to be honest.
Okay.
It's a war. Like, I mean, they're not going to they might talk, a great game about how the consumer is at the heart of everything, but that doesn't mean that we get the best deal. And that would require Netflix and Amazon buying each other out or making some kind of partnership, but that's not going to happen. And even Jeff Bezos...
Would that even be a good thing, though?
Not necessarily. No. I mean, like Jeff Bezos, like the reason that The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, which is an unbelievably, the most expensive show in history.
Wasn't great, by the way.
Wasn't great. And the reason it exists is because he wanted a Game of Thrones rival. He wanted something on his thing that no one else had.
The minute they announced they were going to do it, I was like 2 years ago, I'm not cancelling Prime. I'm going to, they probably got maybe 10 months or 12 months out of Prime more from me than they might have.
About it, yeah. But also on the expense thing, even in a cost of living crisis, there's an interesting kind of rationale, because you do rationalise that. You're like, oh, look, it's only an extra €2. Like, if I go out with my friends on the weekend, I'm going to spend, 5 times that. So
most of us don't go to the cinema as much as we used to. That's
which is a
saving.
Shame. Yeah,
it's a shame, but it's also a monthly saving of at least €30.
You can justify it as well, because even like the Disney library, they've got like Marvel, Star Wars, Fox, whichever. It is good value for money. And even with an extra €2, again, I'm like, well, it's an extra €2. It's like what? It's like
not good enough for you to subscribe to Netflix, though.
$20.99. It's a lot of money.
Last question: the strike. The writer's strike in Hollywood. Do you think that's going to affect things here? Will there not be enough for us to watch in 3 years' time when we start seeing the effect of it?
Oh, I'm very concerned about this. I mean, we would have kind of already seen, the effect of the pandemic on kind of TV and movie production, how the release of a number of shows and films were delayed. I would be very concerned with the writer's strike happening at the moment, because the kind of powers that be in Hollywood have really dug their heels in. And I think that what the writers are asking for is quite reasonable. I mean, the whole idea of maintaining quality of writing and quality of production, it means everyone's a winner. They get paid rightly for their work, and we as the consumer get better quality of, of cinema and of TV, because it could easily become the future that you just put an algorithm in a computer, insert a few, episodes, and then you get a TV episode of, Scrubs.
But according to what you were saying earlier on, that might be a choice that some people might like. Our busy lives, we know what we want. We sort of know the type of thing we want. So there's an algorithm in there that lets me do that. Yeah. Ooh, that's kind of attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it is nice to just come home and watch some rubbishy TV, but then a show will come along that completely kind of opens you up and changes your perspective on life. And I think it's so important that we still get those kind of shows and movies.
This is life for the humans. What do you think, Dave?
I think this is a case of the industry kind of reaping what it has sown. There's been some very strong journalism in recent months. Vulture had this incredible piece about how things have changed in terms of the TV industry and, you know, how much it's all about content now. But if you're not treating the people who make the content, you know, in a humane way and paying them what they deserve, well, then this is inevitably going to happen. So I'm not like, I understand the concerns that Dee speaks of, but I'm like, if this is what it takes to treat TV writers and TV showrunners with a bit more class, fine. I can deal with not having some Netflix junk food. Sorry, Netflix. Again, but like, you know, yeah, we might find ourselves in a situation where we have to stop and assess what we already have. But like I say, we already have too much. And I know I sound like, oh, my diamond shoes are too tight here. But I do think that there's just way too much options and it does overwhelm the brain.
I look forward to the Snooker World Championships this year. Dee Malumbi, audience editor at independent.ie and pop culture expert. Dave Hanratty, arts and culture journalist, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Mary Carroll, who produced, to Gav Hennessy, who's on the sound, and to Conan Doherty, who was on video. From me, Adrian Weckler, you've been watching or listening to The Big Tech Show here in association with Square. We'll talk to you at the same time next week. Bye-bye.